And hello, everybody. This is Chuck Horton. The gang's all here tonight. We're here with Double Cross Radio, and we have David West, Drew Lamb, and myself tonight bringing you news of the Jefferson Republic, state of Jefferson, or whatever. We got a big show tonight. We got a lot of stuff. We have some special guests going to be joining us in the second hour, and we have David back. So, David, welcome back.
Hey, how's it going, Chuck? It's good to be back on here. I know I haven't been on in a couple weeks.
Yeah, it's always good to have you back here. It's we kind of miss David, but he's doing so many great things with the movies. We don't want him to be tied to our radio show and somehow handicap his efforts in making movies. So we regretfully just bid him, do well and make us proud. And so far he's accomplished that. We're really happy with the success he's had so far this year. So anyway, it's nice to have him back. And then Drew, how are you doing this week?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Working too hard. I'm going on 11 months without a day off. So I've been farming really hard. Delivered some microgreens today, so we'll do some more tomorrow. So if you guys are out there looking for a place to eat this weekend, get over there to Ashland, get over to Standing Stone, Macaronis, Thai Pepper. Those guys are really giving us a lot of support. So I was over at Standing Stone last weekend, and I was just so pleased to see my bass on their menu. It was just such a cool feeling.
It's got to be kind of the same feeling that David gets when he sees a couple 100,000 people looking at one of his movies on YouTube.
It's cool when you go, oh, I've arrived, but I don't have thousands of fans, but I'm just really, really pleased to have restaurants like that enjoying what I'm producing and doing very creative things with it. They've had this dish with my bass they've been preparing as a special, and it's Szechuan bass with organic kimchi, and it's really amazing. It's very popular. It sells out quickly, and so I just got to keep them coming, and then we'll be harvesting some catfish soon. I'll be surprised to see what Chef Eric comes up with for that, and then I'm growing some specialty things for him right now, but I'm not going to tell you guys yet because you are going to have to wait and see what the surprise is. So
okay, well, I think it's always awesome when someone pays you for something you produce. That's always it's great.
It's an incredible feeling.
It's the ultimate saying that somebody values what you're doing. So that's great.
Yeah.
I think David probably has realized that same success, maybe at a little larger scale with this winning he won the InfoWars contest, and he's had the breakout thing with the Ghost Gun video that got over 1 million views. Actually, over 1.5 million views, didn't it?
It's close. It's around 1.4 million right now, so it'll hit that eventually.
Yeah, so just those are some pretty awesome successes too. And well, I'm still here. I'm older, so I go at a slower pace. I will say this: my big thing that's making me happy this year is I've one of our former guests, Eric Dubin, is offered to publish some of the things I write on the News Doctors news site. So if you go there and you look, my name is there, and you can click on my name and you can see the archive of my articles that he's published on that website, which I haven't got paid anything like you guys yet, but I still feel a pretty good sense of accomplishment that someone else thought it was worth putting on their website. So I know a little bit of what you feel. When I get paid, I'll feel exactly what you guys are feeling. Okay, so David, you have a new video came out today. I saw it on your this morning when I was checking my email, and I checked it out. It's pretty cute. You want to talk about that for a minute before we get into the main topic here?
Yeah, it's just a new little video I put together yesterday. It features footage from the I guess that was from the Tuesday night city council meeting in Ashland, where people were sort of testifying either in favor of or against the proposed loaded open carry ban. And obviously I was there to testify against it. But the video I put together, there was an old guy who showed up who was a self-styled lifelong hunter and military veteran.
in full camo.
In full camo, who'd grown up around guns, who was there to support the open carry ban. Which obviously he shouldn't have been doing. But, yeah, so basically this guy went through the rules of gun safety, and I was just laughing my ass off the whole time because they were not anywhere near like what any sane person, you know what I mean? Like I've trained in defensive shooting in the military and as a civilian at the Oregon Firearms Academy and Front Sight, Nevada. Not to mention I've taken hunter safety, and, you know, I got taught to shoot by, you know, my dad, my grandpa and stuff as a kid. So, you know, I have been around guns a lot, and anyone will tell you, you know, Drew, you'll, have you seen the video yet, Drew?
No, I've been offline all day.
Oh, okay. Well, basically this guy, what this guy says isn't even remotely factual. He says that the first rule of gun safety is that when you're carrying a gun, it should be unloaded and the safety should be off. And then what does he say the second rule is?
It's totally inaccurate.
Yeah, the second rule is like when you're transporting a gun, you know, it should be locked in a container and completely unloaded, and, you know, you should only take it out at the range, basically. And then the final thing he says is that
if you want to satisfy the cops, then okay, that's a strategy. But there's nothing in Oregon law that says that you have to do that. You know.
Well, yeah, no, well, exactly, and this guy, to be fair, wasn't claiming that. He was just saying that. Basically, what he was saying is that if you have a loaded firearm on your hip, by his logic, open or concealed, you are an irresponsible gun owner. And the final thing that he said was, he said, whenever you're carrying a gun, you should always feel uneasy about it. You should always feel a sense of dread and unease.
What?
And yeah, it's hilarious. And so I made this little video, and he kind of rambled a lot. So I just I cut out a few of the things he'd said because he just was incoherent. But
I always feel comfortable and happy when I have my firearm with me.
That's what I'm saying. You know,
when it's not with me, I miss it. There's like this emptiness. You know.
Yeah, I feel naked. You know. But
where's my pistol? Yeah.
But and as I commented in the chat we were having before the show came on, I just think this is really hilarious that comments like this are coming from people living in a town where they had someone decapitated.
Well, keep in mind that
crime has still not been solved.
It's an Agenda 21 transition town, you know. So
he's still out there.
I'm surprised that this didn't happen sooner. Yeah, they never did find the killer. They think that they found the weapon.
Yeah, I keep waiting for that guy to pop up again because it was so random. It just seems like someone just really wanted to kill someone, and, you know, there's a chance he might want to kill someone else. So
yeah, I've been expecting something like that too. I don't think it was a revenge killing. I think it was just somebody just wanting to do it. And
completely random.
Yeah, and I don't understand how they, you know, trace this murder weapon over to talent. You know, some guy found it in a creek.
Yeah.
And it was like an axe fashioned from an old saw or something like that. That was the best description that I heard.
Did they find any kind of DNA evidence on that? Because I heard about that, but I never really followed up on it.
I don't know, and I don't know how they could have if it was at the bottom of a creek.
Yeah, and without DNA evidence, I don't know how that means a damn thing, but
yeah.
I found all kinds of blades and old machetes and saw blades and stuff lying around out in the woods before. I don't think that means anything.
Yeah, but it seems, I can't believe the community would forget about this because, I mean, right after that happened, people were really upset, and they should be. And I've been upset about this. And I started carrying a pistol on my hip regularly after that happened. And there were people in our building that were afraid to leave the building at night. You know, after that, and I would escort people to their cars. You know, customers to our building, and people would thank me for it. And this person is at large still, and this is clearly somebody who just wanted to commit a very, very brutal attack on somebody, and they just might do it again. You know,
this is real criminal minds kind of crime.
Yeah. Grubbs didn't have any problems with anybody. You know, he was just returning from work. He worked at shopping cart. He was walking on the bike path.
Yeah.
Just literally minding his own business.
You know, another really funny thing that happened at this, because I was at this thing for several hours, 3 or 4 hours at the city council meeting, and I need to actually rip some more of the footage offline and put up another video, because there was this one old lady, I mean, in her mid-70s. You know, we always joke about, like a couple of us had not even really joking, we know it's true, but a couple of us earlier on in the night had basically pointed out to the city council people, look, this ordinance is like literally just coming from a bunch of California transplants who come up here and want to, you know, stomp on our way of life and turn this into, you know, little San Francisco. And hilariously, this lady gets up, and I even think she actually had moved up from San Francisco, but she was a transplant from California, and she had this really quavery, she sounded like she was a crapper pants. She sounded so scared. Probably because we were all carrying guns in there, and she was convinced we were going to murder her for speaking her opinion or something. She was like, when I first moved up here, I went on a flight to go and visit my son, and while I was on the plane, I was so scared. And already I'm thinking, what the hell? You were scared on a plane? Like, what the hell, lady? Like, you know no one has a gun on there. I mean, granted, the TSA is incompetent enough. I guess you don't. But, you know, you got a pretty good idea. And someone like her is obviously going to think the TSA is effective. Anyway, so she's like, yeah, the man I was sitting next to, he told me that he lives near where the Brit Festival is, and he sells machine guns. And I couldn't even help it. Like, I don't think you can hear it on the recording because you know, she was speaking to a microphone. You can't really too much background noise. But I was just flat out laughing at this point. I'm like rolling on the ground practically, laughing because, like, first of all, like, oh, and then she said she reported it to the police when she landed. So, like, first of all, I'm like, wow, lady, this guy's like probably a nice guy having a conversation with you. Like, what a bitch. And you just go report him. And then, secondly, like, I'm sure this guy was doing, honestly, like, to the cops' credit, I have a feeling they probably didn't even investigate it. They probably just rolled their eyes at her and, you know, went about their way. Because as much as I dislike cops, we are in Southern Oregon, and there are some things that they're just not going to ever investigate. But, yeah, like, I got to get that up online. That was hilarious to me.
Wow. I mean, I'd want to know who the guy is. I'd be like, oh, wow, cool. Who is this guy?
Yeah, well, and that's what I was wondering, because my first thought was that the guy was probably, like, he probably, like, somehow got to talking to her and mentioned that he built a couple AR-15s in his garage, you know, not even a machine gun. But then, Open Carry USMC, who I was there with, another local open carrier, he was telling me, well, maybe she was talking to, like, Wellburn or something. You know, the guy from Wellburn's Weapons, who always has machine gun shoots. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I don't know. In which case, like, the guy might live by the Brit, but he certainly doesn't sell machine guns from there. And
Well,
I gotta go find that in the video. I gotta rip that and put that up online, because it's hilarious.
you wouldn't be practicing with them out there either.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like residential right by the Brit. It's not like you'd be doing anything except for, anyway. God, what an idiot though. That lady was just, it was like a cartoon though. You know, just some, like, hoplophobe from San Francisco. So, for those of you who don't know, a hoplophobe is, someone with a phobia of firearms.
Well,
I'm looking forward to a new video.
Yeah, that might be the one that really goes viral, but we'll see.
It could be if she's funny enough.
Oh.
Then you're right. That other guy it was almost a cartoon-like setting with the full camo and the shaved head and the beard, and I was just like, this is like surreal.
Yeah, I'm on the videos page right now. One of the guys, someone commented, I thought this was pretty funny. Someone wrote on the YouTube comments, he probably bought that camo fleece at Walmart just for this meeting.
yeah.
I mean,
It looked new.
it
It wasn't faded at all. It looked new.
You know, the funny thing to me too is that often these guys who claim to be like lifelong hunters and, you know, they claim that they're pro-gun, but they're really anti-gun. They barely ever go shooting. They can't hit the broadside of a barn, and they, and honestly, oftentimes they're not even much of a hunter. Like, they might have gone hunting a few times in their life. So
didn't he say at the beginning that he worked in artillery and the?
Yeah, he did. He was an artillery.
So he's really been around guns his whole life. But those are pretty big guns. The artillery.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's not what we're talking about here, but still, this whole thing. These people, I don't know why they think that they have the right to deny someone the right of self-defense. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I know people who are, avid hunters and sportsmen, many of whom also have, defensive firearms. But honestly, some of them don't. I know some people that they just don't really care for, AR-15s, AKs, semi-automatic handguns. They just don't have a whole lot of use for them. And, I have no problem with people thinking that. But a lot of the people that I know who are actually avid hunters and who just kind of incidentally don't own guns like that, aren't that interested in them, they have no problem with other people owning them. And obviously that's not what I have a problem with. The people I have a problem with are the people who just, hate on anyone who owns, modern firearms.
Yeah, and they'll always make up and sometimes they might even be true, but they'll make up some anecdotal story, or they'll relate someone else's anecdotal story about someone who was killed by some crazed person with a gun, and how we should all be defenseless because of that. And it just, I still don't understand what kind of logic they are, what kind of superior right they think they have to deny other people their natural God-given right of self-defense. So I think that's kind of the final answer to all these people's claims. And that little old lady that got up, she, among all the people there, is probably the least able to defend herself.
Oh, exactly.
She'd be attacked. And she is the one that probably needs this more than anybody else, because there are some punks that live in Ashland. I've seen them.
Well, actually,
and if they know that she's there and she's got money, and she's not going to put up much of a struggle. That's an easy mark.
Totally, and that's one of the points I always try to make to people, and that I tried to make there. I only had 2 minutes to speak, and I had to refute this guy's retarded gun rules that he spouted out earlier. So that took up some of my time. But I tried to give him some anecdotal evidence, talking about how I've had situations where all I have to do is display my gun, and the guy who pulls a knife on me backs down and just leaves me alone. There was one time where that happened to me, and I didn't have to do anything, and if I hadn't had a firearm, it would have been a fight, probably. So
well, at least, you would have had to abandon your position and seek refuge somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be the best scenario on that, without the gun.
All right, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, just the other day in, I think it was in Medford. I think it was over at Table Rock Road, as 60-something-year-old woman got robbed by some young punk guy, came up behind her and robbed her at gunpoint. So, and granted that guy had a gun, but even if he hadn't had a gun, what's the 60-year-old lady going to do? Fight some guy who's, who outweighs her by 100 pounds and is, a third her age? Like, there's just no hope.
Well, I'm glad you're there. I was going to go to that. One of our mutual friends. Well, I think he knows you. In
Colby.
Colby? No.
He was there. He said you were.
Colby was there. Yeah, but there was one of the organizers invited me, and I told him I was going to be there unless something came up, and then. Sure as shooting, my wife had some stuff for us to do, so there goes that. Yeah, so I didn't get to go, but I'm glad that I've got some news on it from you and Colby so far today, so that was great. Okay, I'm going to move on. That was a good first report to start off the show. That was comforting. I may have to speed read here. This is I've been thinking about this all week since the last show about what we're going to talk about this week, or what I want to talk about, and my thoughts keep going about to how necessary this is going to be to have either a Jefferson Republic or a state of Jefferson. We prefer, or Drew and I prefer the Republic. I think David is more on the state of Jefferson side. But regardless of what happens, something has to be done there. in Siskiyou County, and they're going to be voting in June. I said, well, how can I help these people see how important this is to their lives so that more people will vote for it? And I got to thinking back in April 1912. On April 10th, the Titanic set off on its maiden voyage across the Atlantic. And at the time, this was the largest passenger liner ever built. It had been designed to withstand a hull rupture from a collision with an iceberg using a series of watertight bulkheads that sectioned off the ship and kind of made it more secure. It was built for first-class luxury travel, and those who traveled in first class actually, they had it probably a lot nicer than any of us have it today. They had gourmet dining. They had dancing with. This was not just a band of people they picked up. These were name musicians. They had very spacious accommodations. They had people waiting on them hand and foot. Much nice. The cruise ships they have today are very, very nice, but this was even nicer. And this was back in 1912. And the people on board, they were treated like they were kings and queens, and some of them were richer than kings and queens. One of the people that was on board was the grandson of somebody we've mentioned on this show last year, John Jacob Astor. He was one of his grandchildren. He was, in today's dollars, he'd been worth about $3 billion. So they were rich people on that ship. Okay, now I'm going to fast forward a little bit. August 5th, I'll come back to the Titanic in a minute. August 5th.
Real quick, Chuck. Sorry to cut you off here, but I just wanted to backtrack for a second. Did you say, or did I hear you wrong? Did you say that you thought ICE was more on the state of Jefferson side than the Republic of Jefferson side?
I didn't know. I just thought since you were one of the founding people in the state of Jefferson thing that you were probably more on. I
don't even really know if I'm not even one of the founding people. I haven't been all that involved in it. Okay. Trust me, if I was in Siskiyou County, I'd be voting for the Republic.
Okay. Well, then we're 3 for 3.
But yeah.
Okay. So I won't.
Clarify that.
I won't state your opinion without asking you next time.
No worries. I just wanted to let it be known that.
I apologize for that. Okay.
I'm all in favor of making that.
We're going to fast forward. We're going to kind of go back and forth between more current history and the Titanic story. On August 15th, 1971, President Richard Nixon took the United States off the gold standard by closing the foreign window exchange where U.S. currency could be exchanged for gold by the foreign nations. So anybody that had accumulated, they had sold something to the United States and gotten dollars for it, they could go to this gold window and exchange that currency for gold up until February 15th, 1971. And what had happened is because of the Vietnam War, they were printing a lot of extra money and a lot more foreign products were being purchased, and there was just a drawdown of their gold reserves at Fort Knox. And President Nixon was alarmed by the rapid decline of gold reserves due to this money printing that was going on to pay for the Vietnam War. And, and that's just, that's why we have the gold standard, is to prevent us from spending money on useless wars like that one. But Nixon felt he had no choice. The other choice would have been to just close down the war and cut government spending. That would have been the good move. But he didn't do that. Anyway, Ron Paul notes that this incident is the single action that prompted him to become more active in politics. And in 1974, he ran for Congress. He lost to the incumbent Robert Casey. Casey left office soon after because he was appointed by President Ford to be on the Federal Maritime Commission. And they had a special election, and Ron Paul was elected to be representative for Congress from the district where he lived. Almost immediately, he began to speak out against the dangers of fiat currencies. He's been from his time when he was in the military, he had studied Austrian economics. He really knew very, very well what dangerous fiat currencies are, and that they are not stable in the long run, and that no fiat currency had ever been able to survive for more than a relatively short period of time before collapsing and destroying the economy it was within at the same time. Now we're going to go back to Titanic for a little bit. We're going to go to April 11th, 1912. Titanic was truly an impressive ship. It was state-of-the-art in luxury travel. It probably wasn't equaled till maybe sometime in the 1920s. Even second and third class were above what passengers traveling at that level of service were likely to experience if they traveled on a ship from a different company. So they all had their own. They had second-class ballrooms and third-class ballrooms. They had second-class eating and third-class eating, and while they probably had a smaller spatter, I mean, there was some trickle down, and some of the stuff that didn't get totally consumed at lunch on the first class would show up on the second class, and so on and so forth. So I'm sure that they got to experience some stuff that was maybe a little bit better than they were even expecting, but it was still, those people, even on second and third class, were paying thousands of dollars to take this initial voyage. So they were not like poor people, but they were still getting treated very well. And this, remember, is 1912. When in 1912, there are a lot of places in the United States that didn't have electricity yet. So just, you got to remember what time it was and what period of time, and kind of put all that in perspective a little bit. They made a brief stop on the 11th in Ireland, and a few passengers got off there, including somebody who he wanted to use that to travel to Ireland. He worked there as a priest. I think he's a Catholic priest. And, anyway, a couple other people got off, and maybe somebody got on, and then they took off again and set sail to go across the Atlantic. Now that's one day into their fatal journey. Back to the more current history, the excess spending of the Vietnam era had started an inflationary spiral that began to go out of control in the late 1970s. Jimmy Carter had been elected president over Gerald Ford, who had completed Richard Nixon's term in 1976. And he did this by continually referring to a misery index. That was something that was actually invented or created by a guy in the 1940s. And the misery index was compiled by you add the unemployment rate to the rate of inflation, and you put those two numbers together, and the higher the number is, the more the misery. Now, at the time when Carter took over, I think the misery rate was around 10, which isn't particularly good. But soon after he was elected and put on in office, President Carter was hoisted on his own petard. The misery index rose to close to 20. And in the election of 1980, Ronald Reagan was swept in on a landslide. And then at that time, most of Reagan's initial policies really kind of turned the corner on things. He cut back on a lot of environmental regulations and opened up a lot of things. There was more timber cutting, maybe a little bit too much, but there was a lot more work in the forests. There was more mining going on. There was less harassment of industry. They put all sorts of tax credits in for investment in making your industries more productive. A lot of companies took advantage of that to incorporate computers into their companies. And during this time, American industries, they went from kind of being the same as Europe to being able to produce 1.5 times more with the same energy and manpower that their competitors in Europe could produce. So it was really good for a lot of things in the United States, and those things were all positive towards recovering our economy. However, not all of Reagan's policies were so beneficial, and most troublesome, probably to those aware of economic truths, was the continued growth of government. Ron Paul was so upset over what he perceived as a betrayal of what Ronald Reagan had promised in his election campaigns by being smaller government, that he resigned from the Republican Party and joined the Libertarian Party, and he even ran for president, I believe, it was either 88 or 92, and unsuccessfully, of course, as a Libertarian. And he did that more to bring those issues out to the public, and he was partially successful, and to point out how this is not good for America. We're starting down a road, and this started in 1971, but we're starting down this road where this money is kind of being created out of thin air, and it's inflating bubbles, and we're borrowing from the future. We're printing too much money. We're going to eventually have to increase taxes on people. It's going to be closing down our economy. So this was back in the 1980s. Ron Paul was all over this, saying this is a bad thing. It shows you how brilliant this man is. Well, anyway, back to the Titanic. The evening of the 11th, After a delicious dinner, the first, second, third class guests danced in their respective ballrooms in the Titanic as it sailed across the Atlantic. They were mostly unaware of any danger that might be looming and were completely reassured by the captain and crew as to the seaworthiness of this vessel. The band played on as they danced into the night. Okay, the misery index became such an effective tool in an election that big government status in both parties engaged in deliberate deception by changing the way these economic statistics were calculated. Unemployment is now meant that, or unemployment before meant the people seeking employment that were not employed. But after they changed the rules, unemployment then meant that those receiving unemployment benefits were the only ones that were counted. So if you had used up all your unemployment benefits and still could not find work, you were no longer unemployed. You were discouraged or something else, some other number, but it wasn't unemployed. To fully understand just how obscene this is, as I write this, the official unemployment using this method of calculation is 6.7%. However, if unemployment was to be calculated as it traditionally had been calculated before this fact-hiding method was devised, and that was in the early 1990s, so it wasn't that long ago, about 20 years ago, we would say that unemployment is somewhere really close to 23% right now. So that 6.7% is a number that means nothing. Unemployment is really about 23%. Inflation, which used to calculate the price of changes of items that we would consider necessities, has now chosen a basket of commodities which do not include food, energy, or housing, which is, we can do without a computer, we can do without internet, we can do without, that'd be hard for me, but we can do without TV, without cable or satellite TV. We can do without a new car. We can do without, we can patch our clothes and we can put duct tape around our tennis shoes, but we pretty much have to eat. We have to stay warm enough not to freeze, and we pretty much have to be able to put gas in our car or somehow to get back and forth to work. But those things are not included in our statistics. So they say, using their special basket of commodities, that inflation is around 2%. Now, anybody that's been to the grocery store anytime in the last 6 years knows that is just horseshit. The shadowstats.com, they say it's much closer to about 9% and maybe a little bit lower than that. If you actually counted inflation the way you should in terms of how much money has been created, it's probably well above 15% and maybe even higher than that. And we're not sure because we cannot audit the Federal Reserve. We don't know how much money they created out of thin air. That money it's almost like it's imprisoned in the banks that they gave it to. And the only thing it's there for is to make them, they're kind of a zombie bank. You've heard that term. Their liabilities exceed their assets. And so they actually just gave them this money so that they could be whole again. They would have now assets greater than their liabilities, but the stipulation was that they couldn't use it. They had to keep it there in their bank. And let's see what else we have to say about that. In order to bribe them to do that, they pay them interest on that money, and they put over $6.5 trillion in these banks this way, and that money if it was out circulating, would be driving prices up quite a bit. Excuse me, I got a cough. It's horrible. You got something in your throat. Okay, so if you take these two numbers, using the official government statistics of today, we got a misery index of 8.7, which would lead us to believe that indeed we are in a recovery, like they say. And maybe that's why they say we're in a recovery. And everything is well with our economy, and we don't have anything to worry about. But if we use the real numbers, we get a misery index number that is 32. Now, this is about 50% higher than the highest rating that had ever been recorded prior to this administration. And this number fits the picture that I see when I go outside and walk around in my town here in Southern Oregon. There's a lot of people that aren't working. There's a lot of people on welfare. There's a lot of people on food stamps. I think Oregon is one of the leading food stamp recipient states in the nation now. They're just totally devastating this state. Northern California, same story. So it's a horrible economy. And just wanted to clarify that some more. Okay, we'll go to the next day on the Titanic. It's April 12th, 1912. Because we live on a sphere, the distance between 2 points is a portion of a circle or an arc. And for the Titanic, this meant that as they left Ireland, they sailed north first and then turned and went south. So they went quite a bit north of where Ireland was in order to be on the arc that would come back through into, I think they were sailing to New York. And because of this, there were some concerns about icebergs, but it was April, and there were some icebergs out there, but it was kind of like a needle in a haystack. It's a big ocean, and this, by the way, the ship had been constructed to withstand a head-on collision with an iceberg, and so they weren't too worried about it. They kept on cruising. They were, most of the time when they were on the ocean, they were going pretty close to full speed ahead. They had their biggest objective was to be on time. I guess this was a precursor to the Italian fascism where the trains ran on time. That was how you measured the success of a company, so if they were able to keep their schedules. So they were just plowing along through the ocean there, and they pretty much ignored they didn't completely ignore the warnings about icebergs. They had people on watch to keep an eye out for them, because even if they did find one, they didn't want to headlong crash into it, because that would cause damage on the ship that have to be repaired and all that. So they didn't want to run into one, but they weren't that worried about them either. So on this second night of the cruise, couples once again danced the night away as the engines of the Titanic propelled them closer to their destination. Okay, in 1996, Ron Paul returned to Congress after a 12-year absence, and he wasted little time in issuing a strong warning to Congress that economic matters were getting out of hand. He stressed that artificially low interest rates were distorting real market functions, and the boom that was being created was not sustainable, and its crash would destroy more than just some money. I'm going to post this speech or this paper on our Facebook page after the show, and you'll be able to go to a YouTube channel that has this exact speech. And it's amazing. It's 1996, and he sounds like a prophet. It's incredible how somebody who knows about Austrian economics, it's incredible how they can make these predictions. The only thing that you have a little trouble doing is, as you should, is predicting what the timeline is going to be to get you to that point, because there's so many different variables that affect market forces, and you don't know how many of them are going to be doubled down on, or how strongly they're going to be applied, or how they're going to be withdrawn maybe from consideration, or how other things that are going to happen can change things. So you don't know exactly when the last shoe is going to drop. You just know it's going to happen eventually. That's kind of the situation we're in today. But in 1996, Ron Paul this is in the middle of a stock market boom, and the dot-coms are going crazy. Stockbrokers saying, you get in the stock market, you can't lose. These stocks are going, this has no, infinity is our ceiling on this. This is a new technologies, computers, and it's all these different applications, and this is going to be the economy of the future. So we'll come back to that in just a minute. April 13th, 2012. Over halfway to their destination, passengers spent time with idle activities as the ship continued to push its way across the Atlantic. Now, even though this is April, it's still going to be quite cold on the Atlantic, and especially as far north as they had gone. They were up there not too far away from Greenland. So they weren't out on the decks very much. They were mostly inside, and they probably spent a lot of time in the dining facilities and in the ballroom, listening to the band or dancing. I probably couldn't dance all day. That's wear you out. But those would be places where they could get together with people and socialize and things like that. And so they were just enjoying their time, and they didn't have anything to worry about. They were on a ship that was built to withstand a head-on collision with an iceberg. They were, on schedule to be there on time. Everything looked great. They're just going along their way. Everything seemed normal, and soon they'd be at their destinations. Well, this dot-com bubble, it exploded near the end of the Clinton administration, just as Ron Paul predicted, and it sent shockwaves through the economy. The Federal Reserve was quick to react by lowering interest rates even further, and they started a bubble in the housing market to make up for the loss of employment and income that was coming out of the computer industries. So those computer industries were going down in value, and their stocks were going down. They pumped more money into the economy, and it happened by lowering interest rates, and it happened to find a home in the housing industry, which started out by refinancing, and then people realized that they could actually get a bigger house for the same monthly payment they were paying now, and so they started selling up. They'd sell their house and buy a bigger, better one and pay the same payment they were paying before, and that on an individual level, that makes perfect sense. And if that was really a true interest rate of 1 or 2%, as it was at that time, or 3%, whatever, if those were true interest rates that were market driven, that would have been a good strategy. But because the Federal Reserve artificially moved those interest rates down, they weren't market driven, and they distorted the real picture, and they made people think that that was a good move. But as we'll see, it wasn't. Well, anyway, these new Federal Reserve actions just put us back in the same precarious situation that we had just escaped from. We had jumped out of the frying pan, and we happened to land in the pot or in the fire. So Ron Paul warned of many unexpected results from the artificially low interest rates, which pushed money into housing and away from other economic activities. And there's a second link here to a speech he gave in 2001, where he predicted gold would go to $2,000 an ounce, and a couple of years ago it hit $1,980. So I'm going to count that as he called that one right. And inflation, in a housing bubble that would destroy the housing market, which has also happened. And then that's an amazing speech. Okay, April 14th, 1912. The day began as each of the previous days, and the ship's crew went about their daily duties, and the passengers awoke to another day at sea. They were moving south now, just off the Newfoundland coast. As evening approached, they entered an area of extremely still water. We have now discovered that this is typical of water with lots of icebergs floating in it, because they tend to dampen the wave action of the water by just blocking the movement of it, so it makes it very still. Passengers gathered on the decks to gaze out at the water, where they could see stars reflecting and dancing in the water, and it was really quite a sight to see. And that several of the survivors of this recounted as to how magical that appeared early on in the night. Now this was April, and they were fairly north, so they would have been getting dark probably about 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. So they had several hours of viewing these just beautiful sights. Got a cough again. Excuse me. I've been bragging recently about not being sick for several years, and it looks like pride goes before a fall once again. I have a slight cold, and it makes me cough every once in a while. My apologies, everybody. In 2007, the housing bubble began to collapse. Ron Paul began a run for president, where he was able to educate millions of Americans on the problems of our economy that were associated with the Federal Reserve policies and ever-increasing government regulation and spending. Opponents were successful in marginalizing Ron Paul, but the number of people who had been awakened to the causes he was warning us about grew to a number that made him a real contender in a second run for president in 2012. And I'll have to say, if it hadn't been for some illegal activities that stole his victories that he earned in the first two primaries of the 2012 primary season, I think he could have gone on and run the table. He was picking up momentum. He had thousands, tens of thousands of people at all his events by in a short period of time. It was like a tsunami of support gathering. And it must have really shocked those who are entrenched establishment people, because they pulled out all stops, and he went from being the leading candidate in Iowa, like the 2 days before the election, to finishing third. And Rick Santorum, who didn't even show up in the poll the 2 days before, ended up eventually being declared the winner. But when they got down to having their caucus, Ron Paul won Iowa. I bet nobody out there in the audience actually realizes that, other than my two co-hosts. It's just amazing how they stole that from him. But I do have to say this, and this has to be noted, that the vast majority of Americans were still really involved with things like Dancing with the Stars and American Idol and whichever sport was in season at the time, to be concerned with the call to action that was coming from Dr. Paul. So even though he had gotten a lot of grassroots support, there's a lot of people who are just what I would call low information voters. And that's probably the majority of people who vote. They think it's their responsibility and their duty to vote, but they don't have a clue what they're voting on. They just know what somebody on TV tells them. It's like they're the Jedi mind trick. It says, this is the candidate you should vote for. Oh, this is the candidate I'm going to vote for. It's basically, that's what it is. So anyway, back to the Titanic. April 12th, 1912, nearing midnight. The Titanic glides through the still water effortlessly as it makes its way to its destination. The captain has stationed lookouts to watch for ice, so there were warnings. So it's obvious that they had heard warnings about possibility of encountering ice in the area where they were sailing. Suddenly a cry went out that ice had been spotted. An order was given to reverse engines at full throttle, and an attempt was made to steer around the iceberg. They almost made it, but the ice below the surface of the water ripped gashes along the front end of the ship below the waterline. Crew was summoned to emergency stations as it learned that 5 bulkhead sections had been ruptured, and the Titanic could not possibly stay afloat with this much damage. It was possible for them to have 4 bulkheads full of water and still, especially if they were balanced at different ends of the ship, but 4 at one end and 5 for sure would ensure that the ship would slowly go under, because it was just too much weight. It was taking away the buoyancy of the ship. Many of the passengers heard the scraping on the hull, but went about their business as they thought that the ship was unsinkable. It's kind of a normalcy bias. And besides that, the band was still playing in the ballroom. There was a huge problem, though. Only about a third of the 3,339 passengers could be accommodated on the lifeboats that were on the ship. This was compounded by the lack of training among the crew, who were poorly trained in loading and dispatching the lifeboats. Many of the boats were launched only partially full. In fact, when they finally got everybody off all the lifeboats put out to sea, there were space for 500 additional people that were not able to put on there. Anyway, by 2:20 a.m., this was about 2 hours and 40 minutes after they first encountered the ice, had the ice rip the hull. The bow of the Titanic slipped below the surface of the sea, and water rushed in through open portals. And so there was a lot of grates and things on the deck, and that just filled up the rest of the boat immediately. And it caused the boat to tip up so that it was perpendicular to the propellers were sticking out of the water, and it was sticking straight up out of the water, propellers up in the air. And then quickly it just sank to the bottom. And the people that were on deck were thrown off the ship. A few of them were sucked under the undertow. Some of them tried to survive, but the water was 27 degrees Fahrenheit, 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Just the only thing keeping it from freezing was the fact that it was so salty. And you can't live very long on water that way. They say maybe 2 minutes. A lot of people, if you're a very good swimmer and you could, thrash about long enough, you might be able to stay alive for 10 minutes. But most people perished pretty quickly, and they were able to pull a few of them onto the lifeboats that were around, but not very many. And so anyway, the 500 more places were there, but most of the people died. About 2/3 of the people on the ship died. It was the worst boating accident of all time in terms of death, and also it caused a lot of public outcry. There's a lot of calls for government to get involved. But like that was going to solve anything. But that's how things are. Okay, at the start of the recession caused by the collapse of the housing bubble, global government debt stood at about $70 trillion. And that's all around the world, all the governments in the whole world. Since that day, this debt has risen to $100 trillion, nearly 40% increase in just 7 years. Well, I'm getting this information off of a YouTube video by Stefan Molyneux. We've posted that before on our Facebook page. It's only about 12 minutes long. It's pretty good. The U.S. share of this debt is $17.5 trillion. And if you take into account all of the unfunded liabilities, that number is actually $205 trillion. Now, to put this in perspective, this is $653,074 for every man, woman, and child in this country. Or to put it in a more truthful manner possible, the most truthful manner possible, this is $1,428,929 for every working American. So there's a lot of these people that are in this country, they aren't working. So that, sure, that's part of their debt. How are you ever going to collect any money from them? Of the people that are working, the ones who could pay for this, that's how much you owe. So all those people out there listening, if you're listening later on a podcast and you're working, that's how much you owe right now on the American debt. The day that Ron Paul had been warning us about has come and gone and left us with a debt that we will never be able to pay. There will be no recovery from this situation. I mean, this is a debt that cannot be repaid. So what do I suggest you do? Well, Siskiyou County, California is doing something right now that may not have been undertaken with this in mind, but could serve us well to understand. On June 3rd, 2014, that is 10 weeks and 5 days from this program's airing, Siskiyou County will vote on a measure to secede from California and the United States of America. This Saturday in Wairika, Jordan Page is going to be performing a live concert to attract more interest to this cause. We at Double Cross Radio fully support this effort, knowing that the end result will probably not be the utopia we envision, but we still acknowledge that whatever they decide, it has to be better than the situation they find themselves in now. And we also acknowledge that it's going to be much better in Siskiyou County to be an independent republic than part of California and part of America when TSHTF, the shit hits the fan.
Well, and if I can interrupt for a moment, Chuck, the Jefferson Republic would still be a part of America, but it would not be a part of the illegitimate United States corporation. So, but what's happening here is as American as apple pie.
Yes.
And completely in keeping with the U.S. Constitution.
Yes, and I see this Republic of Jefferson as a lifeboat for the country that we all have allegiance to. We're all Americans. We're born Americans. Some of us are naturalized Americans. But despite the large geographical area of Siskiyou County, it's really relatively small, and it can only accommodate a few people. We need a lot more lifeboats. We need a lot more counties to take the kind of action that Siskiyou County is taking right now. And if you need to use them as a model for what's happening, I think that's appropriate. The more independent counties we can get to do this, the better it's going to be for this moment that's going to happen in the near future. We don't know when. As I said, it's impossible to really pinpoint a date or a time, but it seems like it's getting closer all the time. Well, that's obviously it is getting closer all the time, but it seems like it's getting closer faster than the chronological time is advancing. It's last summer we had Jeff Berwick on, and he said it'd definitely be within 10 years, probably within 5. And you talked to him today, he said it's definitely going to be within 2 years, maybe this year. And that's how fast his clock is running. In 1 year, we've lost 8 years of time, a potential 8 years of time, by his measure. And he could be wrong. We don't know. That's the thing. We don't know. It's always possible that, people want to sell a product, and so they kind of exaggerate things. That's always potentially there. Did I just drop off?
No, I hear you.
Drew? I think something happened. Okay, I'm being back on.
Sorry, you're good.
Okay. The little picture went away the UCY picture went away for a minute. I thought I had dropped off.
You're okay.
Okay. But anyway, whatever happens, this is going to give people in areas where they want to accomplish this kind of a situation where they want to declare their independence from the illegal corporate America that Anthony Antiso told us about when he was on the show earlier. Well, that was about a month ago now. A little more than that, about 6 weeks ago. But you have to realize that our economy hit the iceberg a long time ago. That happened when we were taken off of gold backing our currency. It became possible for government to grow almost unrestrained. Vietnam War was paid for by inflation a decade later, and that cost everybody in America a lot of money. I've covered that. I talked about how much of our wages have been stolen through inflation. The Cold War was financed by doubling the national debt. That's during the Reagan administration. For all you people out there who say you're conservatives and he's your hero, he was a pretty good guy as terms of comparing him to recent presidents, but he still doubled the national debt. And he did it by borrowing against, my children's future, my grandchildren's future. So I can't stand with that, as Ron Paul couldn't either. Let's see. Since its debut, I don't know what I was saying there. I think this is a case of spell checking, putting in another word because I spelled a word so poorly. Since the public was concerned about, and they had more knowledge about interest rates, and they wanted the Fed would cause interest rates to go down, so the impact of all the borrowing would not be felt by the general public at all, because as you're borrowing more money, you're going to have a higher interest payment. But by lowering the interest rate at the same time, that interest payment stays about the same, so that we immediately wouldn't feel any difference in what was going on. But eventually, you're going to have a case where you're in a spot you cannot raise your interest rates because you've borrowed so much money. When you do, to raise the interest rate will crush your economy. And that's the state we find ourselves in right now. So all this did when they were lowered the interest rates, it fueled the dot-com bubble that crashed and eventually destroyed a lot of wealth. And then it created a housing bubble that did the same thing. And those in the banking monopoly business were not concerned at all that their policies could have been the cause of this destruction. So they lowered interest rates to virtually zero. So it went down from really low, artificially low, to almost zero. That's where we are now. And they formed a housing bubble. And after a couple of years in this new bubble, financial analysts were all stating that housing prices would never, ever go down. You can't lose money investing in real estate. That's what they used to tell me all the time. Housing never goes down. It only goes up. Just buy, you leverage it, you hold it for a couple of years, you make 20% on your down payment. So you don't, whatever. So anyway, guess what? They were all wrong except for the few Austrian economists and those influenced by Austrian economists that really understood what was happening. Just like Ron Paul, who is very much one of those people who understands Austrian economics. And after they've been proven correct, did people come to them for advice on how to straighten this mess out when we have the collapse of things? No. They didn't. They decided that it'd be better to go back to the old way they did things because they understood how they could benefit from that. So they wanted to still keep on those ruinous policies, which include taxing, borrowing, and inflating currency to get the money to increase the size of government, which they've continued to do. And, it's just incredible how much they have in that time. This was back, still about 10 or 12 years ago, and it's had a huge increase since then. So how long can this ship of state stay afloat? It's difficult to say, as I've said, and there's a lot of different variables that can extend or shorten the time, and they may or may not come into play. One thing is for sure, we need Siskiyou County to become Jefferson and be free of this unstable economy that we call the United States. Hopefully, after some consideration applying the original Constitution that governed these United States, they will reestablish an economic system that is consistent with strong and sustainable economic growth. If this is accomplished, one lifeboat for America will have been created. We need thousands more. So wherever you are, when you hear this, the time to start was yesterday. Don't wait until the bow of the ship slips below the level of the sea and the ship sinks in minutes following that, because then it'll be too late. Just remember that when the band stops playing, you'd better be in a lifeboat. So that was the end of my thing, and I'm glad I read that today. For this reason, I found several typos in there. I thought I'd already proofread that. I'm a horrible typer. Okay.
That was really a great analogy there.
Thanks. I hope that people really see how serious this is. This could be life and death for some people. I think that
I've been telling people if you haven't already transitioned yourself into your post-collapse lifestyle, then it could be too late, and you need to really get on it right now. But what we're doing with all this work on creating the Jefferson Republic, I mean, I see this as my lifeboat. I agree with you on what's happening. We've seen the economy continue to deteriorate, from going back even to 2007, and I saw signs of it even before that. I was pulling back on real estate investments even before that, and stock investments too. Things were looking really scary, and I've been very surprised by how long it's taking this to really play out. It's hard. It used to be I'd make enough money in interest and dividends to make a car payment. Now I just I'd be lucky to be able to buy a bag of chips. With interest and dividends on the same amount of money. It's ridiculous. You don't earn anything when you're saving, and you're earning very little when you're investing in traditional ways, like money market accounts or even bonds for that matter. And it's because the money is worthless. It's the banks don't care. They don't care if you have your money in their bank or not, because they don't need your money to loan.
They've got the Federal Reserve money that they can't spend. And they've been, they were bribed with like a 2% interest rate on trillions of dollars to keep that there, so they would look solvent to the bank examiners.
But for the rest of us, I mean, we don't get to make what used to be considered safe investments and earn a return.
No, and I think investing in the stock market is kind of going down to Las Vegas and taking a chair at the roulette table.
Yeah,
you might have better odds at the roulette table because you got a 50-50 chance almost. It's, just under 50-50 chance. I think there's a pretty good chance that the stock market's going down.
Yeah. Well, I was listening to that guy, Harry Dent on Alex Jones the other day, and he was forecasting Dow 6000. But
he said by 2016.
And he said what I've been concerned about for quite a while, which was deflation, which to us Austrians, we've known that deflation needed to happen, that if the market was left alone, that we would have price deflation as the market stabilized and corrected itself. That'd be a normal function of the market. But the Fed's tried to keep that from happening, but it can only do that for so long eventually.
Yeah, and the reason why deflation is just going to wreak havoc with our economy is it deflates everything. It deflates wages. You're not going to be able to make your house payment because your house payment's not going to deflate.
Right.
But the amount of money you're earning is. And if they try and keep wages up, then they're going to continue on with this misery that we have. It'll look like Japan.
Well,
zombie economy.
There's no good way out of it. Either way is painful.
There isn't.
If you have rampant inflation, Weimar Republic style inflation, that's a disaster. And if we took the Fed out of the equation, and we took government regulation out of the equation and let the market stabilize, we would still have deflation. It would still be painful, except for those that invested in things like precious metals or other goods that are tradable. Well, they'd probably purchase the same pool of goods. You know, the value would deflate, but the value of other things would deflate as well.
There'd be a lot of housing just abandoned.
Yes, there would be a lot of housing abandoned. And so that happened already. You know, people just walking away.
We got a preview of that. It's going to be much worse if it goes that far. And that's why I'm saying that having a vibrant, successful economy in a free republic, it's still part of the United States, but a free republic that doesn't, they're not a part of that debt. That is going to be instrumental to the recovery happening faster. Someplace where there's a growing economy that's producing wealth is going to be the main gear that drives the whole engine eventually. Before when we talked about this, I used Hong Kong as my example because Siskiyou County has got a lot more natural wealth than Hong Kong does. Hong Kong is just a rock. And it has to import its water and its food.
It's almost an island.
It's almost an island. It's just a narrow neck of land connects it to the mainland. And it was hardly anybody lived there until the British decided to make it into a port and kind of dredged it out a little bit. And then all of a sudden it was a fishing place. But because they really were busy in other things, they didn't really pay much attention to it. And they happened to have the good luck to have kind of a classical economics governor there that set up their systems. They were able to grow economically faster than just about any place on earth has ever grown, and now that's the richest place on earth.
Well, it goes to show what can happen when the government's pushed aside and you've got an area where the free market can just operate completely unencumbered. Well, I wouldn't say completely, but for the most part,
Yeah, and this is such a great economic engine that the communist Chinese even leave it alone because they don't want to kill the goose that's laying the golden egg.
Right.
So this is a pretty remarkable place.
And they would have had a lot of troubles if they had decided to impose their rules and regulations and monetary policy on Hong Kong. They would have ended up with nothing. A worthless peninsula. That's what they would have ended up with. So it was pretty wise of them to let it happen. And I don't know if they were using Hong Kong as like a lab to see, well, if we're hands off on this and we let the free market reign, what happens? And do we want to roll out more of this? I mean, China's been doing that incrementally, but for the most part, you've got to be pretty connected to start a business in China. You've got, it's all crony. It's probably worse than it is here.
I see we have our guest.
Hello.
And so,
well, we have Gary Lake with us right now. I'm trying to connect with Tom McCurgan.
I think we have Tom.
Hello.
Hi, Tom. Are you there?
Yes, sir. I am.
Oh, fantastic! I was seeing a little spinning pinwheelie thing here, so I thought maybe we weren't connected.
Oh, he's here.
Okay. Well, so I'll briefly introduce Tom here. Tom McCurgan has organized the Southern Oregon chapter of Oath Keepers. And it's a pleasure to have you on tonight, Tom. Very honored. I am a dues-paying associate member of Oath Keepers. I wasn't in the military, I've been in the trenches of operating small businesses for most of my life.
Very good.
But I absolutely support the cause of the Oath Keepers, and I've followed Stuart Rhodes very closely for several years, and very much admire Stuart, and I back the work he's doing through Oath Keepers, and so I was pleased to see a chapter here formed in Southern Oregon. You guys usually meet over at the Black Bear on Barnett Road. Is that correct?
Right. That's the Jackson County chapter, and it's headed up by Brian Cannon over there.
Yes.
Right.
So tell our listeners, please, a bit about the Oath Keepers, its mission, current projects, future plans.
Okay, sure, Drew. The Oath Keepers, as you know, is founded in April of 19th of 2009 in Lexington, Massachusetts. Lexington Green, where the first battle, happened. And so Stuart Rhodes had formed that, and basically it's to get the current serving and other elected officials who have taken that oath to honor it, to stand by it, to protect it like they swore to. And that's all it is, honoring your oath. And if more people were to do that, we wouldn't have the problems that we have now in the country. So, and as far as myself, I'm a retired policeman, so I took that oath twice, 1981 and 1989. And so those never expire until we expire. Anyhow, Oath Keepers is a educational foundation. They reach, teach, and inspire those oath takers to be oath keepers, not so much to join our organization. However, that's also very well indeed, but to help us, the news, and to help others to encourage them to remember what they took was serious and not just ceremonial.
Yes, and this is this is very important because law enforcement especially are put in positions on a regular basis where they sometimes have to enforce unconstitutional laws or are told to do things that are completely against the Constitution. I cite New Orleans, post-Katrina New Orleans, for example, when they were confiscating firearms. An oath keeper would refuse to follow unconstitutional orders.
Exactly. And you said something earlier about how they have to enforce unconstitutional laws. And I know it's just a play on words, but actually, if you break it down, they do not have to enforce unconstitutional laws. They do not have to enforce federal laws that our local, state, and federal county, or state, county, and local police do not have to enforce federal laws. Look at the marijuana laws that the federal government says.
I was just going to bring that up. Yeah.
There you go. So tons of those on the books, and most local law enforcement will use a federal law when all else fails, when they don't have something on the state statutes that's going to work for them. So that's one way they get around it, you say.
We're seeing this in Southern Oregon right now with these dispensaries that want to open up. Oregon law is allowing for these medical marijuana dispensaries to open up. They have a lot of hoops they have to jump through. And you have some city governments that are reluctant to allow this to happen because, they say that they're supposed to uphold federal laws. And I disagree with that, but that's their excuse at least. And
they use that to their benefit because the law allowed them to make that sanction or particular levy on their city ordinances. But then again, the people of the state of Oregon voted for it. And so it's just political pandering and it's political maneuvering is all it is, really.
Yes. Yeah. I find it very disturbing. And the mayor of Phoenix in his newsletter recently was using that as an excuse for putting a moratorium on medical marijuana dispensaries in the city of Phoenix when in fact very few people have spoken out against the dispensaries at city council meetings in the city of Phoenix, Oregon. So they're dragging their feet on this. I don't know if the council or if the mayor in particular want to keep this from happening. You know, if it's for personal reasons or if they're worried about some sort of repercussions. You know, if somebody disagrees with their decision says, well, you swore an oath to uphold federal laws. That just seems insane to me.
Well, are you asking if I did?
No. I was just saying that I'm speculating as to why these. There's a lot of cities in Oregon actually that are dragging their feet on allowing this to happen. But from what I've seen personally, just since yesterday, the city of Phoenix, Oregon, seems to be leaning on the fact that their business ordinance, their charter, and an oath that the officials have taken states that they will uphold federal law.
Well, no. I'd like to see what that oath specific specifies on it, but I've never seen an oath that they swear to enforce federal law. No.
Right. So,
and I can interrupt just a second. And that's kind of the whole concept that the original Constitution was written to, is to diffuse all the power away from the central authority to the individual governing bodies, which would be a community or a county. And back east, the counties are a lot smaller than we have out here in the West. Mm-hmm. And so that you probably could run into just about everybody in your county in a week or a month worth of time. And, I guess as the population density grew, maybe that become harder and harder to do, but they just envisioned people being able to get on with their lives and to rule their own communities. And if, someone was a bit authoritarian or abusive of rights, then people just moved to another community and, they would kind of, go on their way, but they never imagined having some kind of a centralized command center that would be passing down. It was never supposed to be a top-down, political or law organization at all. It was always supposed to be bottom up.
Right. That's how communities, governments are formed. It's a grassroots thing, and it starts off with two people. That's it. You know, and then government goes from there. But it is under the will of the people, control of the people. In what we do is we try to get those people again to honor that oath that they swore. And in law enforcement, you see, you take an oath to protect the U.S., the state constitution, and you also swear to the law enforcement code of ethics when you do that in the academy. Are you aware of that?
No,
I was not, but I do know a little bit, but I didn't know the entire part of the ethics. I have a couple of friends that went through the academy, and one of them was complaining to one of his friends. He says, I just swore to this oath, and I can't be around you if you're going to be doing certain illegal activities. Because I'll be in violation of that oath, and I take it seriously. So don't do that around me. So I did know a little bit about it. I don't know the full extent of it.
Well, the thing is, it shouldn't be about the Constitution. They're talking about statutes. But see, in that law enforcement code of ethics, which police officers take it very personal, it's akin to the hypocritical oath, for doctors and stuff. But in that, it also states about protecting the Constitution and the rights of the people therein. Okay, so that's a thing that they take personal, and so there you go. You get 3 levels of protection: the Oregon Constitution, the U.S., and the law enforcement code of ethics. So this is a FYI for that one. But most law enforcement are good, decent people, and we want to bring the ones that are kind of shady and not thinking about it, we want to bring them around because we are pro law enforcement. We love our police, but we refuse to live in a police state. And they've got to realize that they too have to live under the same despotism that they're willing to enforce. And if it's unconstitutional and immoral, the public is going to have something to say about that. And the prime example of that is Katrina. Look, when they said that people are not going to have arms, they're going to be confiscated. We had oath keepers there that were deployed with the National Guard, and they refused. They stood down and said, we're not going to do this. We're not going to kick in any doors. We're not going to be using it as a pretense to take away their weapons. And when you got, a 200-pound gorilla, knocking down an old lady holding a pistol with a cylinder open, and she couldn't even hurt nobody with.
Right.
Say no threat. I mean, there's a camera on the guy wanting to get some action. Well, he got some action, but
they beat the hell out of her.
Yeah, it's embarrassing
Yeah.
from a professional standpoint, but it's very hurtful to the community and to people. And look what is that message does that send to the community? You see, not a helpful one. If in my day when I was working, it's just different. It's a different way, and I just don't recognize a lot of the same people today. Different era.
Yeah. Yeah, the footage I saw from that was very, very disturbing, and I couldn't have imagined that happening in my community. It was just I was absolutely appalled by what I saw, and when they were raiding homes. I mean, going into the mansions, where people had means, people had property to protect, and they were minding their own business. They didn't need any help. And disarming them.
Well, it's pretty bad when you got to be more afraid of the police than the people in your own neighborhood that are, or strangers in your neighborhood, which some of the police are.
I know a guy who was there. He was in the Army, and he was there, and I said, why did this happen? He goes, well, you've got a bunch of young guys, and they're going to follow orders.
Right. And here you got a lot of law enforcement coming in from other states. And so they have no allegiance to that state, really. It's to their boss. But,
right.
And some of them, probably want to be a hot dog, want to get some action and do that. Some of them are sincere and wanted to help. I mean, I thought about it. I wanted to help too if I could have got down there and do that. But then again, I wouldn't be involved in working with anybody like that of that caliber if they're going to be that way. There's no way.
Yeah.
You brought up a point earlier I think we need to repeat and kind of emphasize for people. The people that are police that haven't come around to this way of thinking yet, they really need to be aware and consider the fact that their children, their wives, their parents, their aunts and uncles, cousins, whatever, they have to live in this police state that if they want to continue down that road, they have to live there too. And it's more than just a paycheck. You really have to stand up for what's right, or they won't only use you as long as they need you, and then you're going to be the enemy too.
Yeah, in that respect. But here's the deal. Local law enforcement know the people here, and they have to live here. They have to abide by the same rules, and they're held to a higher standard. So let's go to something like the National Defense Authorization Act. We've been successful in 4 counties in the state, and we're taking it to the state legislature by 2015 on a 2012 bill. There's a story behind that. But we've had Coos County, Douglas County, Klamath County, and Lane County that have already passed resolutions stating it's unconstitutional. Our sheriff has even stated that here in Coos County. So we're making a dent in Oregon. So when you've got some departments like the city of Coos Bay, we took a resolution, an anti-NDAA resolution, asking the city of Coos Bay to initiate it, where they can say that no law enforcement in the city of Coos Bay will even assist with effecting the arrest of anyone under that section 1021 and 1022, which, as you know, is creates American citizens, puts them under military rule. He can be rendered to a foreign country or entity, held indefinitely with no due process whatsoever. So we're not going to tolerate that in the United States, and definitely not, at least in these counties. And when you have departments like Coos Bay that are willing to enforce those laws, it's unconstitutional and immoral, and they know that those are 2 rules that you don't cross and that you need to stand down. If they're willing to enforce that, then they are, in fact, at that point, bringing war upon the American people. And they're facilitating it through the local law enforcement, which I can discuss later if you like about how they entice them with materials and equipment as well.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Get into that.
Sure. Well, they have under the Pentagon's 1033 program, what they have, and they began that in the 1990s. And so far they've given away up to about $5 billion of military equipment. They've retrofitted 2,717 MRAPs, mine-resistant, ambush-protected vehicles. They hold about 10 people in there comfortably, fully equipped, you know. So these are vehicles made for combat, but they're now on the streets of America. And as the pseudo president has stated, there will, you know, we don't need machines of war on American streets. Well, look around you. You see, they're using it under the guise of terrorism to protect us from it. But in reality, they really haven't protected us from anything. They've allowed more danger to be seated around us by allowing unlawful immigration into our shores. That's basically an invasion, a violation of the Constitution. I mean, goes beyond insane.
Do you think they're pre-positioning military resources?
Yes. And these are not entitlements to departments. They're enticements.
Right.
And what I mean by that is not just equipment, but, and I'm talking about riot equipment, shields, batons, helmets, vests, flak jackets, and weaponry. And Bearcats and MRAPs, you name it, Humvees. I know that Lane County's got 4 of them. And also DHS grants for extra people, you know, other jobs, other equipment. They're tied into the fusion center up in Salem called the Titan Fusion Center. And I believe there's more of it in the southern region too that we're looking at as well. But at any rate, what else would you like to know?
Wow. That's just some heavy info. You know, I've followed this, but just, you know, hearing it, you know, come from you, it's very disturbing. And, you know, and you see things passed around on YouTube, you know, with military equipment being moved across country on train tracks, and you wonder where it's going. You know, and I know some of the stuff's heading to an auction yard someplace, you know, and some of the stuff's being destroyed, you know, but a lot of it's being shipped out to local law enforcement agencies.
Right. Some of it is, and some of it is being pre-positioned. If you look at, and people say, well, why is all of the postal service being equipped?
Yeah. Why did they need a bunch of ammunition?
Because they have postal inspectors, is what they have. So they're like their little investigators, you know, but they've got to feel important too. So
I see.
Right. But they'll use that for practice, and then you've got the National Oceanographic and
the weather guys.
Those guys too. They have their own security. NASA has their own security. They have their own department, and they fly around in helicopters around the shuttles and all that stuff, you know. So they've got to have all the neat buzzers and whistles, you see. Everything is turning more militaristic, and it's just it's insane. And they want us to. It's also conditioning society. And if you look at Northern Ireland, okay, I have relatives over there. Bergen, you can figure out. Anyway, these people live under military life. They live under military rule. We no longer have the Posse Comitatus to prevent that.
Right.
We did. That if you have knowledge about it, that was from 1878, and
after the Civil War.
Yeah, that was from 1861 to 1865, but afterwards, well, from 1864 really is when they occupied the South, and Sherman went down into the South and up to through South Carolina, and what they did is they used the general the census of 1850 and 1860 census to find these farms and to raid them and burn them down and things like that. And they used their foraging missions, and they would take all the stuff. Sherman said that his army would march on a gut. You know, that's how they work. And so they could skin a pig and still stay in step. So at any rate, the United States government also has the National Defense Resources Preparedness Act, which is basically the NDA.
That's an executive order, actually.
That is. You're right. And that basically lets them take any equipment, machinery, seeds, clothing, food, anything off your farm or whatever they need for the use of the military. So
they're planning for something big, and that leads us into the civilization preservation teams.
Right. Let me back up real quick here on the Patriot Act. Not the Patriot Act. It was affected by it, but the Posse Comitatus Act.
Yes.
So they had held these regions in the South with military governors, and they had all of those 11 states under the Confederacy held under military rule. So basically, it was just like the NDAA is today in that respect. So these people got tired of it, and so finally by 1878 they passed the Posse Comitatus Act, so you couldn't use military on American soil as police. So then you've got the USA Patriot Act of 2001, which blew that away. And on top of this, that was started by George Bush. So not everything that happened under Obama's watch. It began with George Bush. Mm-hmm. It actually began with his father.
Correct.
1990, September 11th, actually. We know where that went. Okay. So, anyway, what they did is they brought in the authorization for use of military force shortly after they obliterated the Posse Comitatus with the Patriot Act, and that opened up the door for what we're seeing today. And it's a slippery slope that they've gone down too rapidly, and it starts off slow and incrementally, but people start getting used to it when they look around. They start missing this liberty here, liberty there, and they do it through regulation and statute. So,
yes,
people are waking up for sure.
Right. So,
I find that it's a lot more the older people that understand, because they have probably the most memory of the freest time of all the people that are here in the population still. They can remember, probably in their teens and early adulthood, basically not having to worry about too much of anything in terms of personal freedoms.
Well, I mean, on the flip side, there's a lot of old people that I think are some of the most brainwashed people out there. I mean, these are the people that sit and watch Fox News all day, and a lot of them have some sort of deep-set racial prejudices, and they have no problem with the military going overseas and killing all the sand niggers and stuff. So, there's a flip side there. The other possibility is just a lot of these old people just remember how, they don't remember all these crazy laws when they were younger, and so, they don't realize there's so many more now. And they're the ones that support the war on drugs. You don't meet 20-somethings that support the war on drugs.
What's your definition of older person?
I mean, it really all depends. I think any sort of like old conservative, I think could be anyone, in their late 50s and above.
I found, David, that with people that I know that are even as young as their mid to late 60s. Are still, I've encountered a lot, especially when we've done some of our activism, and when we were campaigning for Ron Paul, and we're standing outside, on street corners, talking to people, you'd encounter these people that were still caught up in that right-left paradigm. And, it would make my head explode, like when we were outside at that, Dick Morris, presentation at the Criterion Theater, and these guys walking out talking about how they're going to vote for Mitt Romney or Rick Perry, and it was kind of like listening to a 5-year-old speak or something from my perspective.
Those guys were younger than that. There were some of the older people too, but those kinds of people were more in the, I would say, 30 to 50 range.
And there were some really young guys there too that were probably in their early 20s. But what I wanted to get back into here, Tom, is, it's abundantly clear that the powers that should not be are preparing for something, and what's probably going to happen is some sort of an event that will justify more security or martial law or this sort of thing. It'll probably be a city gets nuked, economic collapse. I mean, there's so many possibilities right now that could cause chaos. And what the Oath Keepers are trying to do is put a plan in place so that your local community doesn't have to be experiencing chaos. You know, that this order originates right on your own block. You know, by knowing your neighbors and being able to provide for yourself, provide for your family, provide support for your neighbors. You know, and that ties into Stuart Boat's and Oath Keepers' plan for civilization preservation teams.
Right. We've modified that now to community preparedness teams. So
okay. Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. Could you get into that briefly?
The community preparedness teams, it's got a better ring to it, and it's more along the lines of what we're talking about. And Oath Keepers has in their chapters, we've got several active chapters now, growing exponentially, and we're building one in Siskiyou County, by the way. It'll be probably nicknamed the Jefferson chapter, you see. But Oath Keepers, we're going to be in that area, and we're going to be staying. That's it. So in Oregon, we're trying to we want to connect Oregon and California, the northern part, because we all have the same things in common. You know, we're all part of that region, even Coos County, all the way over to Delaware County. We're all part of that Jefferson movement.
Yeah, we've all been severely impacted by the regulations, the spotted owl, the mining concerns, the Clean Air Acts, all those things that have basically taken away our way of life. Siskiyou County, since 1990, I think it's lost 78% of their economy. Just incredible.
Pretty bad. And this gives people a chance. A lot of them come to us because they don't know what to do or where to go. And they come to us for direction. And they look for camaraderie, like-minded people, freedom-loving individuals, and earnest ones who have taken that oath, and they're going to abide by it. They're going to take it serious, or they don't take it at all. But on our CPTs, for short, the teams are built up into different areas, and we use for our benefit the model like the Special Forces A team. And even though we're not, we're just using it as a basis for the system. So in those teams, you break it down into communications and medical, security, food and water preservation, things like that, communications that I haven't mentioned, all kinds of areas that we can work. And a lot of them are trained in the CERT program, for, like through FEMA, the emergency training, and, ham radio licensed operators, combat medics, you name it. I mean, everybody's got talent, and they're coming to Oath Keepers, so we also have that talent to choose from. And it gives people a chance to address their concerns, use their First Amendment to redress grievances with your local elected officials, and if they don't, hold their feet to the fire. And we lead the way with that too. We're working on a couple other areas locally and over in a couple other counties that we are holding these politicians to it. Matter of fact, in Josephine County, we had our Oath Keeper coordinator and some of his people over there, our members, had submitted a resolution to Josephine County commissioners to reaffirm their oath to the Oregon and state U.S. Constitution, which they did on January 8th. So we're making small dents, and we're wanting to let them know that we're watching them. We're going to hold them accountable, you see.
Right.
And that other people in the community has that voice too. They have that ability, that right. And they should, especially now. And in these teams, we will help build, we use it as a force multiplier to help train other teams to get other people to help their neighborhoods and neighborhood watch programs. And that's one way it can blossom off. It can balloon from there and go to the VFW hall. You've got tons. I mean, you might even have a whole platoon or a battalion in some of these VFW halls and not even realize it. You know, in different eras, of course, but still combat trained people. And by the way, that's one of America's biggest threats to the federal government is the veterans, and we take issue with that, obviously. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. These people aren't a threat. They're a benefit to the community.
Right. They're only a threat to those who would impose their will against us.
Yes, absolutely. And the whole idea here is to have, you know, communities stabilized, you know, have communities with the resources they need. So, you know, when FEMA comes rolling through, you can just say, "Oh, we're good here. See you later. Bye."
That's the same purpose. You bet. That's the purpose right there.
We're good.
Yeah.
We've been modern medicine, and we're great. We even have communications. Thanks. Bye.
And that's the thing. You hit it on the head too. We've got the communications network set up. Well, if our lights go out, our comms won't. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I mean, there's other things. You know, we don't want to bring out too much of the fun. But at any rate, it's a very good organization. People can go to our main website if they want at www.oathkeepers.org, and that'll take you to the main page, and you can go on the forums there. You can become a member. We have a Oregon Facebook web page, Oath Keepers of Oregon, and also meetup.com. meetup.com, and people can sign up for notifications there as well for whenever we have meetings, and they're welcome to come and take a look at Oath Keepers, see what we're all about.
So Tom, what do you think of the concert that's going to be taking place on Saturday down there in Wairika? The performer there is a big supporter of Oath Keepers. He's appeared at a couple benefit concerts with Stuart Rhodes.
Right.
He was on our show last year talking about that as one of the things he hoped to accomplish last year is to help them get some of their programs off the ground with these concerts and stuff. So do you guys have a lot of people that are going to turn out and support him in this concert?
I sure hope so. And I don't know too many Oath Keepers in the area. I know there's some, and we'd like to touch bases with them, but we're anticipating a pretty good group of people there. I mean, they're wonderful folks and God-loving and American people, you know, in these rural areas, and the Klamath and that area, Siskiyou. I mean, they're just really tired of what's going on. And those are the people that are standing up, and those are the ones that are looking for direction too, you see. So I hope that we can give them that direction and give them that hope, because there is light at the end of the tunnel. We're not going to lose our country. There's no way.
Exactly. And you don't have to be, a veteran. You don't have to be active military, police, or fire, or anything like that to join. You can be an associate member if you like I am. It's only, I believe it's only $40 to join.
Yeah, that's it.
And you have to, you know, you have to take an oath to uphold the Constitution, and you get a packet that has just a massive amount of information in it, and stickers and bumper stickers, and you get more than your $40 worth for sure.
Oh, sure. And the other thing is you get access to the forums, you know, and we're deep down in the forums where members, you have to be a member to access, obviously, but within those ranks, you've got military and police and fire and EMS, and even more so. I mean, so much, so many professions, so much talent and camaraderie that you can experience there that you can't just get by going to their outside forum. And a lot of people think that if they go to the Facebook site and they click like or whatever, they're okay with it. But anyway, the one thing we do is, we offer people, when we have our meetings, we do oath reaffirmation or oath swearing in ceremonies. And we give people a chance to take that oath for the first time if they want, or to reaffirm it if they take it in the past, you see. And so that's another benefit to it that we like to do. People just like that. They feel good about it, and makes them feel like they've got a cause now. They've got America. They've got to stand up for it, you see.
Right.
And it's every American's duty to do so, to protect that Constitution. And if we don't, we won't have anything, and the nothing is worth it without liberty. nothing.
I agree wholeheartedly there, Tom. And I really appreciate your coming on the show tonight. And we all appreciate the Oath Keepers' support of Jefferson. And we look forward to meeting you guys in person.
You bet.
This coming Saturday. And you're welcome to stay on the line if you want. I'm going to bring on Gary Lake here to talk about the Jefferson Republic Liberty Concert with Jordan Page that we are having this Saturday, March 22nd at the Siskiyou Golden Fairgrounds in Wairika, California. Hey, Gary, welcome back to the show.
Hey, guys. How you doing? Nice to be here.
Doing really good. Even better that you're here.
Oh, right on, man. Everybody's been busy.
We've been really busy. We've been out hanging flyers and selling tickets and getting gear together and getting AV equipment and trying to make this thing happen this Saturday. We're getting down to the wire now.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. I can't wait.
And Jordan's going to be here soon.
Yeah, he's gonna he'll roll in real late tomorrow, and then we'll get him sacked out and get some rest, and then we'll be hitting the show, and having a good time, man. It's going to be a blast. I can't wait.
So the event is starting at 4 p.m. There's going to be some speakers.
Yes. At 4 p.m. There's basically going to be a brief presentation, just basically going to go over the Jefferson Republic, some of the law behind it, what makes it, what qualifies it. And then we're going to talk about Measure C a little bit, make sure that everybody, there's people that just need to be qualified that will vote for it, and some of them won't. And that's the beautiful thing, man. It's all about choice. But, 4 o'clock. And then I think, if you want to come early and mill around a little bit and talk, there'll be a lot of like-minded people there. That'll go to 5 o'clock. Then we'll kind of get things ready for Jordan at 6, and then, man, it's just going to be a party. It's going to be a blast celebration.
Well, I've just been amazed by the public response. We've been out on the streets. You and I went out together. Chuck's been out there. We've been out on the streets engaging people, handing out flyers, hanging flyers, talking to strangers, telling them about this. And the response has been overwhelmingly good, favorable. People have wanted to hear about this. They've been supportive of it, and it's just been absolutely amazing. I think the most negative thing somebody said to me was, "Well, I'm behind this, but you guys have your work cut out for you. I wish you luck." That was the worst thing that anybody said. But other than that, I was over at Bella Union talking to this woman who. Little elderly woman, and she goes, "Oh, you're talking about the state of Jefferson," and she points down to this book is in their gift shop area, their little wine shop, gift shop, and she points down the state of Jefferson book, and I go, well, it started out with that, but this is the evolution of that movement in Siskiyou County. And she goes, "Oh, well, tell me more." And so I started explaining it to her, and she goes, "Oh, I support the Jefferson Republic now." And she goes, if this passes, I'll move there.
Yeah, that's cool. And you know what? It's really cool. It's like, it's just, there's a lot of people that have a lot of the same grievances, and it's been going on for some time. And, the Jefferson Republic started in this, started out, state of Jefferson way back when. We all know how that goes. And then 8 years ago, Tony and the Granges, Siskiyou Granges, they got everybody fired up on it again, and really made some headway. But they had some obstacles, and that basically being on bended knee and asking for permission from, say, people that got us in the situation to begin with. So they checked it out, and it evolved, and started doing some legal research and so forth. And then they were fortunate enough to realize that our founding fathers, 227 plus years ago, they said, "Hey, man, these guys up in Siskiyou County, man, they're going to need some help." and we're going to make sure that they've got it, and we're going to provide these provisions within this Constitution that they're going to need. And so it's pretty cool to be thought of by our founding fathers of the United States, so 100, 200 and some years ago, huh? How's that?
Well, Ben Franklin, I'll paraphrase him, said, "You have a republic if you can keep it." And that is the challenge. I don't think people realized how challenging that was going to be. I mean, we've all but lost that republic, you know.
Yeah. Well, and here's another little tidbit. And Tony, I don't have the Anthony Antiso has just got an incredible mind. I don't remember exactly how this goes, but I'll do my best job. Like I'd tell a joke, I'll probably butcher it. But anyhow, they, Thomas Jefferson, 50 years after the Constitution, basically wrote to, I forgot the name of the gentleman, but it was somebody of like mind and very active. And he basically said, we screwed up. We had an opportunity to fill in this album, as we saw fit, and we left some things out. And so, and you know what? We've got hindsight now. So we know what probably things that Jefferson left out, and now we have an opportunity to make sure that we establish a freer way of life with more liberties and honor our inherent rights that we have when we're born. So it's a real exciting thing. We're just really in a really incredible time in history. But Jordan Page he's going to be singing about that, and he's going to be talking about the fact. A lot of people are saying, as you said, hey, I'm behind it, but it's going to be a lot of work. Well, that's a beautiful thing about America and the Jefferson Republic is they get that liberty. They get that ability to just gripe about it and then see it come to fruition. And we the servants we get the opportunity to go broke doing it.
Exactly. Well, people should get out there and help. I mean, it's fun to do that. Get out there and be a part of it.
Yeah, it really is.
Tom, I agree. It's very fun getting out there and talking to people about this. I've been having a blast getting out there. I mean, it's been amazing. You get engaged in some really good conversations, and Gary and I bumped into some guys outside of a cafe in Jacksonville, and I just approached them. They're getting out of their truck, and I said, "Hey, do you guys believe in constitutional government?" And they were stunned, and they go, "Well, yes." And then Gary and I had a conversation with them about the Jefferson Republic. They were very supportive, took flyers and wanted information. I thought we were going to sell them a pile of tickets right there.
Hey, Drew, do you remember what was the name of that cafe there? Do you remember?
I can't remember that cafe. It's over there by is the museum still there?
Yeah. Well, to add on to that story, it's funny because, I come walking up and you're engaged in a conversation with them, and then they asked me something about water or something. I can't remember what it was. So we had a good conversation. So right after talking to you, and you'd given them some flyers and stuff. So they go in, but when I was hanging a poster in there, the owner was so interested. There's probably about 15 people in there having lunch, and they were like all hanging on every word of our conversation, and it was people are listening and people are waking up, and it's a lot of fun to be part of such a historical process and something that is so worthy. And everybody within the state of Jefferson movement and in the Jefferson Republic movement, I mean, we all want a better, quality of life has got to be improved. Tyranny is not a good thing, and our freedom and our liberties have got to be, reestablished. This is a great country that is quickly going down the toilet.
Well, they realize the magnanimity of this, how large and a movement this really is. I mean, it's really reaching into the hearts of the minds of the people of this country. This is reverberating through the United States, folks. This is not just something local.
That's good to hear.
It's building up, and the revolution has already started, and people they can't be blind to that because it started in 1760 before 1775. They were setting up victory poles and they were throwing snowballs at the British. They were really harassing these people because they were tired of it. That's when the revolution started. But then the fight started for it afterwards. But we want to avoid that. We want to turn it around. And I think we absolutely.
It seems like the equivalent of the Boston Massacre happens on a nearly daily basis in the United States. And yet there aren't enough people speaking out. but there are a lot of people speaking out.
Well, history is our best teacher, and we're fools if we ignore it. Period.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
absolute fools. And you know, and it just takes a few of us to get out there, like Paul Revere,
yeah,
and start yelling, "The Fed coats are coming! The Fed coats are coming!"
Hey, Drew.
Yes.
I think your show's over in a couple of minutes, so I just wanted to get something out there real quick. Basically, we're going to be, like all your viewers or your listeners know, we're going to be, kicking it off at 4:00 and everything, but it's going to be a blast. And I've heard this is something that happened. We had that Sportsman show, just recently and had a blast there, man. That rocked. Sorry, my probably hearing my alarm clock or my, clock in the background. Anyhow, that was just totally rocking. And, you know what people are saying is like, man, I wish I could, we would go, but we have to find a babysitter or whatever. So if you've got kids, that are like, 16 and under, don't bring real young kids. But if you got some kids that are 16 and under and that they can actually absorb this message, because you can't start them too young, I don't think. But, Jordan would be, I think, a real good experience for some of the youth. So what we'll do is we'll package this thing where if you show up, if you're a couple and you got, a 16 and under kids, we'll give you a sweetheart deal, of $50 for two parents and 16 and under come in and get some education and have a good time doing it. So, but it's free at 4:00 anyhow. So, the kids would have fun at that. But if somebody wants to rock out and they got to go home because they got kids with them and they're old enough to, be responsible and not make a ruckus, bring them in, man.
That's what's neat. I think that's a pretty good deal, for you guys to do that. Very, very good, Gary. Thoughtful of you guys to do that. And I think people ought to go. It's just going to be wonderful. We're going to be out there. We want people to come see us at Oath Keepers and we build some leadership in that county. I think we can do that. And this is going to be great because Jordan Page is an awesome singer. People are going to love this, so get on out there.
What a treat. What a treat.
Thank you so much for letting me come on the show tonight too, by the way.
Absolutely, Tom. It was a real pleasure. And, Gary Lake, thanks again for coming on.
Oh, it's an honor.
Be on again. And, this has been a great show. This is one of my favorite episodes ever leading up to this huge event in Siskiyou County on Saturday. And so you guys have been tuned into Double Cross Radio with Chuck Horton, Drew Lamb, that's me, David Kirk West, and our guest, Tom McCurrigan from Oath Keepers, and Gary Lake. We will see you next Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific on UCY.tv. Thank you and good night.
Uh-oh. I hear the band playing. I hope it's not too late. You guys better get active. See you next week, everybody.